CALPADS Error Resolution CERT165, Invalid EL English Language Acquisition Status Code. Okay, so as always, the general theme here is you always consult the error list. That's the first step you should take when troubleshooting any error in CALPADS. Starting from the left to the right, the first two columns on the left help you identify your reference material. Once you found your error description, that's going to tell you the problem. That's this third column in the middle. Primarily enrolled English learners who are aged 22 years or older in grades kindergarten through 12 must be designated for adult English learner, ADEL. That's the new status in the 2021 academic year. Also, the fields validated, the column that's in the center, will help you identify where to find the information that triggered the data or the data discrepancy. So we're going to be looking at the enrollment data for the student information data, specifically the student's birth date, because as you can see, it triggers on students who are age 22 or older. And then the student English language acquisition data. We're going to be looking at the English language acquisition start date and the English language acquisition code. And so CALPADS gives us the suggested resolution. Understanding the error in this case just reiterates the problem. Adult age 22 years old cannot have an EL status code. And then the suggested resolution says verify the student's birth date. That's why we're going to look at the demographic information in the SIMF. And it says verify the student's English language status start date and status code. That's because this error is triggering in fall 1. So the start date for the status is on or before Census Day, and the student's status is going to be EL because it says they cannot have an EL status. And then we're just going to look at the enrollment data because if the student error is triggering for us, the student should be enrolled in our district or charter school over Census Day. So the error list provides us the tools and information. It tells us where to look, tells us the problem, and some method of resolution, right? And we could blindly make changes to our data, but that doesn't help. So there's a couple things we have to know. We have to know our students' data, right? We have to be familiar. We have to go in our student information system and know the stuff about our student, because maybe we have to correct the student's age. Maybe that's the problem. Or maybe we do have to add an EDL code because the student is 22, but what's an EDL code, right? And so there's several factors that influence how we try to resolve this error. Although you're not specifically referenced to other documents, when you're troubleshooting, you often have to go to other documents to get a further understanding. And so let's walk through a few of those supporting documents. So you can go to the CALPADS code set and look up the status codes, right? And we have English learner and ADEL. Currently, the student in the example will be an English learner. And to resolve it, we might have to put adult English learner. And so it tells you the difference between the two, specifically ADEL, because it's a new code, the definition you should be familiar with. And it says, a student aged 22 years or older in grades kindergarten through 12 who has been identified by LEA as a English learner through local process, home language survey, or local assessment. Because the student is not eligible to take the initial language proficiency LPAC, adult English learners are not considered English learners for the purpose of Title III funding and state accountability. So it tells us what an ADEL is, but I still don't understand why the student can't take the LPAC, right? Or I'm still trying to get a grasp of this. Where else can you go? Well, for business rules and policy, the data guide is a great resource. But when you have a new code in the academic year or in the reporting cycle, staying abreast of flash messages is a really good resource. And in the case of this error, at the time of this recording, a great resource is Flash 191. And so it has a further description, and I don't think I want to read everything, but you can see we highlighted one thing that's very important. LEA should use the ELA status of ADEL for students who are at 22 years or greater, enrolled through K through 12, and have federal partnerships, okay? It goes on to say, although charter schools can enroll students of any age, students 22 years or older or greater, even if they have been determined to be EL through local assessment, are not eligible to take the summative LPAC proficiency assessments. They do not qualify for Title III funding. And so federally, Title III funding, the age of these students make them ineligible, okay? Also, it says, and therefore, They're not included on the dashboard. So we wanted to make a distinction because we know that by their age, these students are not eligible for Title III funding. They're not included on the dashboard, but the last paragraph says, however, they do count for the UPC, the unduplicated pupil count for the LCFF. And so because they could generate concentration grant funding for your district, you do want to have these students included. And so that's why we have the Adult English Learner Code, or the ADEL code, right? Because we want to track these students who are still enrolled. They still going to generate state and local funding through LCFF, but federally, they're not applicable for Title III funding, and they're not going to be counted on your dashboard. So again, now you know the why certain students trigger the 165, and the background information should help you determine what is the best method of resolution, right? So you want to identify your students and know if they're of age 22 or older, their English language status, which was, part of the error list, and move forward from there. And so without further ado, let's demonstrate how you would resolve a CERT 165 error. All right, so here we have in front of you the Fall 1 snapshot. And today we're going to look at resolving a CERT 165 invalid EL, English Language Acquisition Status code. So we click Show, and we have the information for the student presented to us. Here's the SSID, which we can right-click and open in a new tab. I like to do that rather than just clicking the link because it allows you to go back and forth. So as you can see, there are other errors that need to be resolved. By having this error in its own tab, I can always come back. I'm preserving this screen. So that's something that we like to do. And so here's the student's data. And I can scroll down. I don't need demographics. I need student English language acquisition status. And I can see the student has an EL and a TBD. So why does a CERT 165 say this is invalid? Looks fine to me. Well, the first thing you should do when you are troubleshooting any error in CALPADS is to consult the CALPADS error list. So let's do that. And if you don't know, you can always find the error list here at the bottom. But if you're going to be the primary person working in CALPADS, you should have saved the error list to your desktop. And I have, and I can drag it before you. So this is your description, right? So we know that we have a CERT 165, an invalid English language acquisition status code, right? So we use the first two columns, the name and the error number, to identify our reference material. The problem is in the error description. It says primary enrolled English learners who are age 22 years or older, enrolled in grades K through 12 must be designated as an ADEL. So we're going to look at the enrollment information for the student. We're going to look at the demographic or the student information, specifically the birth date, right? Because it says 22 or older. And then we're going to look at the CELA data. We're going to look at the English language acquisition status and the status start date. Understanding the error, adult age students 22 years old cannot have an EL status code. Verify the student's birth and verify the EL starter state. Now, we're going to look at the student's record and we're going to identify resolution methods. However, if you are troubleshooting this error, you should understand why the student cannot have this code, okay? And so you have to look at reference material. And so there's other documents that you may have to refer to, the data guide, code sets, FAQs. There's always other reference material to get you understanding. That also helps you know what method of resolution is best for your particular student. You can't always follow the suggested resolution. The information changes that you make to your students' data to resolve errors should never compromise the accuracy of the data reported. And so I say all that to say, you know your student data, you should know your student data, and making the appropriate corrections is dependent on your knowledge of the student data, not necessarily business rules or certification errors. So we don't need the error list anymore. I have an EL student, and I have to verify the student's age. So you can come to the demographic record and look at birth date, or it's up here as well. All right, so we can see that we have English learner, right? And then we could look at the demographic record to verify the student's age. So you can see 8/5/1998, also 8/5/1998. So there's two places to look at the student's age, right? This is 2020, sometime in October near Census Day. And I can see this student just turned 22 years old, which according to the error list cannot have an EL status, right? So this is an easy fix because for the CELA, I can't change this status, and that's not what I want to do. I can add a new status date. And so I'm just going to validate and post a new status. So I validated this. However, we're going to pause because it's important you understand the student's 22 and I'm updating the status, but look at my status date. It's 11/4/2020. That's not going to help us because the census day in 2020 is 10/7. Let's say it's 10/7. I can't remember the exact date, right? But this has to be before census day. So this changing the status to today's date isn't going to help me, right? So let's cancel this. Okay. And let's find out what day we should use. Yeah, so census day was 10/7. So our student has to be ADEL at least by 10/7. And so to resolve this error, I go back to my student information system and I'm going to update the student's record. I could choose the student's birthday after the student's birthday, or I could choose a date before census day, okay? And so let's just choose a date before census day. And this will effectively resolve the CERT165. Now for procedural guidance, if you want to know the date that you should use, again, that's where you refer to other documentation that's not the error list. Procedural guidance may often be found in the CALPADS data guide. However, at the time of this recording, the data guide has yet to be updated with the ADEL code information. And there you go. We could post the record. And you can see we have ADEL. And during the next snapshot, this will resolve the error because the effective or the status date is 10/1/2020, census day is 10/7, and our students have been 22 since 8/5. So that's all that needs to be done to resolve a CERT165. Just remember, if you did it the way I demonstrated in online maintenance, you have to update your local system as well. But if you want to do it all at once, update your local system, then submit a new CELA file, and that will resolve the error. If you need any further assistance or have questions, please contact the service desk. We'll be looking forward to helping you and hearing from you. Thank you.